Good morning. Good morning. As everyone is taking their seats, I'd like to just a friendly reminder to silence your phones because that will happen. I'm Susan Harris. I am one of the chaplains at Boston Children's, and I'm honored to be Dennis's rabbi. So the music that you just heard is Chips Ahoy by the Holding Steady. I want to say every step of being involved in this memorial service has led me to learn new things. So I know it's obvious why this song, which is an ode to a gambler, a racehorse gambler strung out on drugs, and her lover, was the way to start this service. I know that that's obvious, but I'm going to try to explain anyway. This is Danny's choice. During the pandemic, Dennis would take the boys out for nature walks. There's another theme which will emerge in another song about that very thing. But part A was the nature walk, and part B was going out for fast food at Sonic. And the overarching through line of the experience is this is one of the songs that Dennis played in the car when he was with the boys. And this is what music does. Its energy captures a moment, an event, a time. It encapsulates it and expands it. And this service will be filled with music. Aldous Huxley observed that after silence, that which comes nearest to expressing the inexpressible is music. And another poet said, music is love in search of a word. So all of the songs, all of the music that we will hear hold many memories. Consider today's music love notes from Dennis and Nancy. We are here to remember Dennis, to be with him together. It's both a solemn and celebratory moment, this being together. We are a multifaceted, organic, crowdsourced memory of love and admiration. We will hear lots of music, we'll watch a video, we'll hear from the people from all different parts of Dennis's life. We will hold our own memories gently to be touched and expanded. Quoting Dennis, he said, looking back at all my best experiences, the patients and families for whom I truly made a difference, the key was being myself. We may have experienced Dennis in many different circumstances, venues, times, but we all knew the same person, and what an honor. To know Dennis, to have been included on his journey. His was a life well lived, full of integrity and service, filled with music, ideas, growth, irreverence, family, friendship, significant relationships, all utterly suffused with love. later, we will hear a song also introduced to me by Dennis and Nancy. And the artist said this. The song Paprika is about being in love with what you do, music, creativity, and the community that supports it. Being in love with what you do, music, creativity, and the community that supports it. That is you, that is Dennis, and that is why we are here. I would like to introduce Mike Miller, who is a longtime friend of Dennis. And for the record, Nancy knew him first. Mike and Dennis met at the end of freshman year at Northeastern, and they were roommates. They've been friends ever since. Mike is a history teacher and a track coach at Weymouth High. Both of those themes also figure significantly into Dennis's life. And I welcome him and look forward to hearing what he has to share.
Thank you. I didn't write this down, but because it wouldn't have made sense if it wasn't true. This is an amphitheater that is fit for a life like Dennis's. It's filled as he was. It wouldn't have made sense if it wasn't filled, so I didn't write it because then it would have been. So first of all, I want to thank Nancy for asking me to speak to you today. I suppose I should probably be thanking Dennis too, because apparently I was his choice. So if this doesn't go well, feel free to blame Dennis. That always worked for me. What a lineup of speakers that we've put together. We have Rabbi Harris, the chaplain of Children's Hospital. We have Matt Brown, an accomplished author, a brilliant public speaker, an inspiration to millions who have been touched by his story. Greg Durkin, the director of clinical education for Children's Hospital and a professional keynote speaker in the field of healthcare. And one time I got a B- in freshman English at Northeastern. So they batted me leadoff, which is the right place. That's the spot for me. When Nancy asked me to speak about a month ago, it took me about 3 weeks to sit down and actually write this out. I kept putting it off, and I really couldn't figure out why. I just wasn't sure what tone to set. Should I be light and humorous? Should I be philosophical, melancholy? The latter two seemed silly because Dennis brought so much laughter and joy to everyone here. Making people sad just couldn't be the goal today. And I remembered something Nancy told me that set me on my way. She said, just tell stories. Dennis loved stories. He had this way of making you feel like you were the best storyteller on earth, and he would always ask you to tell a story even though he was there. And another friend of mine said to me last week, the deceased live on in our stories. And if that could be true, I would talk all night. And I can, by the way, I have the ability to do that. It has been said, you have two choices. You can either have character or you can be a character. Dennis's life is proof that this is not a choice. You can be both. Dennis both was a character and had character in spades. So as I share a few of these stories, they're all very Dennis, hysterically funny, and with a deep appreciation for the humanity that he always demonstrated. I met Dennis in the most Dennis way possible. He was, as you know, the drummer for a local hip hop and funk band called Epileptic Disco. Doyle had the tape when I was a freshman at Northeastern, and I noticed a note in the liner that said, for bookings, email ddoherty@links.neu.edu. As a lonely freshman at Northeastern, I just needed a friend, so I lied. And I said I wanted to book the band. In my driveway. I don't know, but he didn't ask, so that was good. So he got back to me and we met at the student center and we had Burger King. I think I had Master Walk, and we never stopped being friends. I introduced him to Lars and he introduced me to Larry and basically all of Dorchester. And then Lars and I and our friend Chris Quinn asked him to move in with us. And it was the man so proud of being OFD. It was his first time living away from Dot. I should point out to you that I was born in Dorchester. I was born at St. Margaret's Hospital, and I used to tell people that I was OFD. And then I met the Doherty family. And I am in no way, shape, or form OFD. They're the Departed, and I'm fever pitch. Like there's no. I'm OF Weymouth. By the way, just one last thing about this. I never decided who was weirder in this. Me for emailing a stranger to meet me for lunch because he was a drummer for a band I liked, or him for responding. But I started it, so I guess me. Living with Dennis was one of the true highlights of my time at Northeastern. I can speak for Chris and Lars and Pat and everybody else who's done this. My favorite part was he would wake up in the morning after a clinical. He would forget he didn't have his glasses on, and he would have to slide across the wall with using his shoulder as like the way to see. And so Lars called him Thrill Ho from that point forward because he was like Milhouse from The Simpsons. And but what I learned from that experience is that you couldn't get under Dennis's skin. He was so good-natured and self-aware that any joke about him, he leaned into. And it helps because nobody could dislike him. It's impossible. And he probably knew that. He definitely knew that. And so he took it as well as I know, but he almost never dished it out, except to Larry, Dave, and Tim, because he would say they deserved it. After college, Dennis, Lars, and I became as close as college friends can be. We became obsessed with NU hockey, Northeastern hockey, and we needed a fourth for the annual hell that was the Beanpot loss to BU. So Dennis insisted that Tim Colby, who had never attended a class at Northeastern, should be our fourth. He was, and he still is, an honorary Husky. And as I met Dennis's family over the years, Paul and Denise, Bridget, friends like Dave Curran and Tim and PK, his cousins like Richie, I realized that Dennis was as loyal of a family member, friend, as you could have. You could bicker with him about any range of things, but you had a friend for life in Dennis, and you had a brother for life in Dennis. I remember a Red Sox game when we were in our 20s, and Dennis and Larry had, there's some kids here, Dennis and Larry had gone to the bottled water guy over and over again. And in the seventh inning, they stopped serving bottled water. And Dennis and Larry got into an argument that neither of them could tell you what it was about to this day. I don't think they could tell you what it was about at the time. And the rest of us were like, is this the end? Like, if Dennis and Larry split up, it was a banger, man. They weren't talking. And then the next day they were on Mill Street debating who was the better wrestler, Akeem or the one-man gang. Nothing really ever got in the way. Maybe the best example of that, the escapades of Dennis and Larry happened at a Pogues show at the House of Blues. Dennis was very joyous during the set, and he was just flailing his arms wildly the whole time, drumming as the drummer would. And he visited the water guy that night a couple times, and so he was double fisting Waters, and Larry had the audacity to remind him that he was literally soaking the girls in front of him. And his response is, to this day, and I have to apologize to the rabbi because you can't say it any other way. He said, Larry, this is my shit. The Pogues is my shit. Playing bagpipes, that can be your shit, but this is my shit. Dennis had so many shits though, like There's like 50 things that he was more passionate about than anyone else I knew. I don't even know how it's possible. So right around this time, Dennis met Nancy, I think at the Squealing Pig in Mission Hill, and everything changed. He was already more grounded. He was a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital, and that's going to have a grounding effect on anyone. But Nancy completed him. She was what she was what he had been missing. I don't know any couple that so perfectly balances each other. Nancy let Dennis be Dennis, and Dennis let Nancy be Nancy, and they had the best life and the best kids. Patrick and Danny, even if it doesn't seem possible right now, are the luckiest kids in the world. They have the mom that they have, they had the dad that they had, and even though it was too short, it's gonna make them the most incredible people. And look around here, because every one of these people in here would do anything for those kids, because their dad would do anything for us. Dennis, the husband and dad, were special versions of him. Watching him patiently guide Pat and Danny made me a better, more patient father myself. Watching him and Nancy love their kids and love each other unconditionally made me a better husband myself. Knowing Dennis made me want to be a better version of myself, and I'm sure that's true of most of us. I also got to meet a new version of Dennis in 2014 when he came onto our staff as the nurse at Berkshire Running Camp. His explanation to a cabin of kids when one of them came down with hand, foot, and mouth is still, to this day, my favorite moment. He said, "Yo, kid, you got to wash them hands," to a confused sophomore who was clearly not OFD. He did not know what a kid was. A few years later, we moved to a new campsite in Hinsdale about an hour before every single camper was supposed to arrive, 250 of them, all with medications that the nurse needed to label and secure. That's Dennis. About an hour before the kids were set to arrive, Dennis drove, no cell service, no GPS, and no warning to any of us. He drove into town in search of plastic bags. Hinsdale, Massachusetts is not really even a town, it's just farms. By the time he arrived back at camp without any plastic bags, he was greeted by 200 frantic parents about to drop their children off at a camp that seemed to have no nurse. Also, there were 1,000 plastic bags in Chuck's car if he had just asked anybody before he drove aimlessly into the wild. Every time I hung out with Dennis, he made me double over with laughter. Even when he would do something that initially drove me nuts, it gave me a story I could tell for months. And he would make me tell it in front of him as if he were a character in the story he had never met. Last year, Guns N' Roses played at Fenway Park, and I received a text from him. I had to look the text up. It said, "Yo, you should roll the Guns N' Roses." It was the summer, and that sounded awesome. So I said, "Nice, how much?" He said, "Oh, I don't have a ticket for you, but you should just go." Undaunted, I tried again, asking which section he was in, and he finally responded, "Oh, there aren't any seats in our section. You should just be at Guns N' Roses." When I protested and told him how ridiculous that was as a premise, he simply replied, "It's not about you, it's about Guns N' Roses." If you don't believe me, I'll show you the text in my phone. Another story that I've come to think about every time Dennis's name gets mentioned happened last year when we took a trip to Las Vegas. I woke up to a text that said heading to breakfast and got out of the shower and called to see where to meet the group. He told me they were getting Fruity Pebbles French toast and where to go. And I rushed to the elevator for a 10-minute walk. I started to ask him to order for me, and he said, "Yo, it's no rush. We already finished and just paid the bill." Information that probably would have been helpful prior to my running out of the hotel. My knee-jerk reply was, "Dennis, you're not a bad person. You just make terrible decisions." And when I realized that I was in an elevator with an entire bachelorette party, I was required to explain to these ladies what he had done, and they all took my side. Both of these stories on the surface seem just like funny anecdotes about a guy who doesn't think before he acts or speak. In reality, they actually tell a much bigger story. Dennis never wanted to hold on to an experience for himself. If he enjoyed something, he desperately wanted you to get as much enjoyment out of it. He possessed pure selflessness in so many ways. I bet every one of you is the subject of a story Dennis told with joy and passion at some point, whether it was Tim's ability to recite entire scripts of WKRP in Cincinnati, Duke's ability to MacGyver a contraption in his garage, or Nancy's patience as a constant source of strength for him. When Dennis talked about the people he loved, you knew how much love he had in his heart. When we got stranded in Vegas due to an airline issue for 2 extra days, the rest of us were furious. And while Dennis wanted to get home to see Nancy and the kids, the moment he realized he could now see someone called Piff the Magic Dragon live, the cost-benefit analysis he hammered out was an easy win. And that was him. Whatever the adventure was, he was all in. Dennis was the most all-in person I have ever known. There was nobody I would rather have an adventure with, because no matter how much something went off the rails, he knew a story was coming out of it, and he just wouldn't be the one telling it because he'd rather hear someone else do it. If you're here today, Dennis was a huge fan of yours. Even if you don't realize it, he was. The way he spoke of his family, his friends, his coworkers, even people he only met a few times, was that of pure, unadulterated fanaticism. You were, for lack of a better phrase, his shit. That's the last time. When I got the call last August from Larry that Dennis was sick, he politely asked me not to reach out, to give Dennis some space as he was still processing and wasn't ready to talk. I was about to ignore Larry's request because Dennis would tell me to ignore Larry's request usually. But before I could even text him, my phone rang. It was Dennis, and he said, "Larry said you're ready to talk to me." I wasn't, but I wasn't going to tell him that. He said, "But we aren't talking about me. We're talking about camp and your cross-country season, and we're talking about your stuff." That was him. Even when everything needed to be about him, nothing was ever about him. He told me that he didn't know what he had left, and he said, "Get used to saying yes a lot." So I did. We saw the Lemonheads, and we went to NU games, and I said yes every time he asked me to do something, and he said yes every time I asked him to do something. I decided I was going to try to pack our last 40 years of friendship into those months, however many we had left. When you get to be our age, you might see your best friends a few times a year. And we were going to see each other a few times a week to make up for it. The lesson Dennis taught me is to say yes a whole lot more. Pack more into the years we have. Fight for your friends and your family. We got the news 5 weeks ago that Dennis was in the hospital and he wasn't feeling good, but nobody knew what was coming next. On Saturday, I got a call from Larry at 8 in the morning, which was the best gift I've ever received. He said he knew we were keeping our distance, but that Lars and I should consider heading in that day. He had a feeling we might not get another chance. A call was the hardest, at the same time, the most valuable thing I've ever experienced. Got to say goodbye, I love you. He went down trying to make us laugh all the way into the end. That was his gift. It was never about him. It was about Guns N' Roses. Dennis passed on a Sunday. The next day, the Huskies played in the Beanpot final, their 5th in a row. If you guys don't know about Northeastern hockey, we didn't do that for a long time. So that was a big thing. He couldn't be there, so we brought Dave Curran, a BU alum, to watch NU celebrate their 4th title in the past 5 years. I like to think that the final prank Dennis pulled on Dave was making him watch Northeastern celebrate on the ice. I'm sure most of you have experienced the same thing I have over the past month. We all know how important music was to Dennis, and it feels like every song reminds me of him. My Apple Music playlist is a landmine like that. But after I got the news, I put my headphones on and I headed out for a run, clear my head. I have 2,500 songs on my playlist. And the first song that came on the shuffle was a Larkin Brigade song called Dot Day. And I'd like to leave you with the last line from that song, the one that reminds me most of Dennis. He made a life and death decision. Well, thank God he's done. It seems so long. So buy the kid around tonight and heave a sigh of relief. Dennis is home. Thank you.
Request through the car over to find some rest. Saying I future. Sit on his phone, watch TV, romance, action, mystery. Wanted to show you. Sine wave is a particle ride. Bring your light out, then in on the tide. Maybe I love you. Maybe I love you is a river so high. Maybe I love you is a river so low. I love you, still don't know. My certainty is wild, weaving. For you I am a child, believing. You lay beside me, sleeping on a plane in the future. My certainty is wide, weaving. For you I am a child, believing. You lay beside me, sleeping on a plane in the future.
We're going to move to a different form of media next. We're going to see a video spearheaded and lovingly constructed by Michelle DeGrazia, a colleague of Dennis's, and we will hear reflections from staff and colleagues, leadership, just the many facets of how Dennis was experienced at the hospital in many different aspects of his career.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Wood, Boston Children's Hospital's Chief Nursing Officer. It's been my distinct privilege to know and work directly with Dr. Dennis Doherty, Nursing Professional Development Advanced Board Certified Professional, during the past 10 years. I know there are truly thousands of individuals whom Dennis considered a friend, though now we've learned that Dennis's heritage as formerly of Dorchester or FOD was always code for his signature identity. It turns out we were all true FODs or friends of Dennis. I first want to express our love to Dennis's wife, Nancy, his children, Patrick and Daniel, as well as to his parents, siblings, and close friends during this time of both loss and remembrance. Thank you all for your generosity in sharing your husband, father, son, brother, and friend with all of us at Boston Children's during what were truly many days, evenings, nights, weekends, and holidays, all made possible due to the space you created for Dennis to contribute so much of his time and talents to the benefit of all of us over the last 2 decades. While a nursing professional development specialist by certification and job title, excelling in all aspects of both direct care in intensive care settings and nursing education, Dennis will long be remembered by his Boston Children's colleagues, and most certainly by me, as a person who infused and amplified a great sense of joy, generosity, humor, and humility into virtually each and every interaction with others. Beyond Dennis's regional, national, and increasingly international professional reputation, and truly eclipsing his achievements as an exceptional educator and scholar, Many of us believe Dennis's most important legacy centers around his profound human decency and authenticity. Dare I say, we are better and different Boston Children's Hospital nurses and colleagues because we knew and worked with Dr. Dennis Doherty.
I just wanted to share a few of my thoughts of my colleague and friend, Dennis. I'm going to start when I met Dennis. He was a fairly new nurse. I'm not going to lie, he was a little disorganized, but he had some critical thinking skills. They just needed to grow. And he was so easy to teach and mentor because he would just say, explain this to me, or tell me what I could do better. I don't think I ever set out to be Dennis's mentor. I think he might have picked me. But 20 years later, the bond has remained, and we have been friends and colleagues, and we have done some awesome teaching things together. Our Say Nest video is an epic video, in case you haven't seen it, Oscar worthy, as well as our mentoring podcast. Our relationship has been sealed by pivotal experiences in our lives, both good and bad. And I will always remember the day of the marathon bombing when Dennis was running his first marathon. I was so terrified waiting to hear that Dennis was okay. And then some 3 hours later, when I saw some of the crumpled tinfoil blanket in an education office, I knew that he had arrived to his MSICU home. I searched for him and gave him a huge hug, and I think he hated it, but I meant it. And walking him out that night was a privilege, and helping him in the hospital towards the end were also great privileges of my life. I'm really glad to have been your friend, Dennis, and our memories will always be etched in stone.
When I think of a word that best describes Dennis, it is impact, and how he impacted both the profession and his own personal growth. Dennis impacted our Nursing Science Fellowship as one of its first fellows. His passion for healthy work environments and the value of the charge nurse role were areas that he advanced through the framework of clinical inquiry. Dennis also embraced the mentorship offered in the fellowship program and understood early on the importance of having more than one mentor, and that mentorship was lifelong. Upon graduation of the 2-year program, he became one of its best ambassadors, and I believe he is one reason the Nursing Science Fellowship program moved from a program-based initiative to a hospital-wide opportunity. Dennis would often talk about how it was that experience that moved him to continue his academic journey, obtaining a master's and then more recently a PhD. Many of us attended and celebrated his PhD defense, and it was such a joy to say, congratulations, Dr. Doherty. I think we can all agree the impact of Dr. Doherty's practice in science will benefit many of us at BCH as well as our profession.
I want to thank you for the opportunity just to say a few words about my colleague and really my amazing friend, Dennis Doherty. I think I speak for most people when I say that this comes from a place of really deep sorrow, but also like tremendous gratitude. Just gratitude that I had this front row seat to somebody that is what I call next level awesome. But to be next level awesome, it's really was about how he made you feel. And Dennis was someone that made people feel awesome. He made you believe that you could do anything, you could be anybody. If there were barriers, or if you had any inkling of self-doubt, he would just make you believe that you could just move right through it and push right through it. And a lot of times that advice was exactly what you needed. As most people know, Dennis had some very unique and special language that he would use, the isms. But my most favorite phrase that he would use with me would be drop knowledge. And it would come across my phone and I'd be working away, and it always brought a big smile to my face or a chuckle, because I knew what that meant. It meant that I was going to get to have some person or phone conversation with Dennis. It might be a debate that he wanted to kind of challenge me or debate me on something, or it might be just, my thoughts on a particular show that was streaming on Netflix or Apple TV. So you never knew what the conversation was going to be, but I always knew that it was going to be next level awesome. And when I hung up the phone or when I walked away from the conversation, I knew how I would feel. And that was always happy.
I'm the chair of the Evidence-Based Practice Committee at Boston Children's Hospital, which oversees the EVP mentorship program. Dennis Doherty was a part of my leadership team for many years, specifically as a program coordinator and professional development specialist. In this program, nurses and other professional staff answer burning clinical questions to improve patient care and optimize care outcomes, which Dennis was all about. My memories of Dennis always revolve around his enduring capacity to put others first. And Dennis always had the ear of the mentors and the mentees who would be the first to speak up on their behalf when recommending changes. His devotion to keeping in close communication with those we were supporting was critical to the long-term success of this program. And I often relied on asking Dennis bluntly, is this going over well? Is this working? What is the popular opinion? How is this change being received? And this was his strength. He always took the time to have meaningful conversations, to provide that constructive criticism and really let you know what he thought. He was a tremendously gifted colleague, an advocate for nurses, for the nursing profession, a cheerleader for pediatric care, for Boston Children's Hospital, for those he worked with, and most importantly, for the patients that we care for. His absence will be felt in our group, and I know throughout this hospital, and we will forever cherish and remember his legacy here.
We were asked to just say a few words about Dennis Doherty, and honestly, this is so hard because where do you even begin? He was such an amazing man. However, I was a new grad nurse that was in one of his new grad class, and he was just absolutely amazing. He took me under his wing along with every single one that was in that class with me. One of the big things that he encouraged me to work on was the healthy work environment, and it was the first committee that I took on as a new graduate nurse. And I didn't really realize what he meant when he said that I should do it. Just say yes. It always leads to good things.
Yeah, I could say so many things about Dennis, go way back with him when we were staff nurses together, but I will focus specifically on what Nicole shared about the healthy work environment. I had become the nurse manager on the bone marrow transplant unit, and about 2 weeks into it, I had to realize that I had to spend some time thinking about who could I pass the baton off to be the healthy work environment champion for our unit, because I had previously been identified to do that. And I spoke with Dennis, and immediately he talked about Nicole Noble, and we went back and forth, and Nicole had only been a new grad for 5 weeks at this point. And knowing how big the healthy work environment program is and what it would entail, I said, Dennis, you sure? She's like, you're a new grad. Is she gonna be okay with this? And he just pushed me and he said, with you helping to lead her and seeing her through this, she can do it. So like Nicole's point, there was never something that we all couldn't do. We set our mind and hearts to it. And I will forever thank him for that. He made me get comfortable with getting uncomfortable in many situations, but specifically with this, it just really had me have a different lens, and I'm forever grateful.
Dennis was one of the first people that I met when I started at the hospital. I'm a behavior analyst, so I'm not a nurse. Dennis knew that I would have a difficult time initially integrating into the hospital setting. He was definitely right. He really took the time to help me understand the hospital environment and the key stakeholders. Anytime that I knew I was going to see Dennis or even have a conversation with him, I would always have a notebook with me, because I knew that I would walk away from that conversation with 10 new ideas of how to approach a situation, or maybe a creative way to provide staff training. Dennis taught me a lot of things. He taught me about the importance of listening to staff and finding out what is really important to them and making that the starting point. He taught me about the importance of collaborating with other professions. and most importantly, the use of Bitmojis. I still smile every time I see these. Because of Dennis, I don't view problems as problems. I view them as opportunities to improve care, to collaborate with staff, and to use humor and smile, because everyone benefits from a good laugh.
Like anyone who knows Dennis, I have 1,000 stories I could tell. But the one I'm going to tell goes back to a couple years ago when I was new on the CEI team. I was assigned a project where I had to redesign the competency-based orientation manuals we use for nurses across all of our different practice settings. I had all this information and different recommendations, and I was really stuck. And I had been stuck for a while. One Friday after work, Dennis and I decided to go grab a bite to eat. We went to the Salty Pig in Back Bay. We were eating some pizza, and Dennis asked me how my project was going. One thing you need to know about Dennis is he did not believe in work-life balance. He believed in work-life harmony. And for Dennis, that meant after work on a Friday, we talked about work. So he asked me how my project was going, and I told him. And I just wanted him to give me the answers. I wanted him to tell me what to do. But he didn't do that. Instead, he asked me some questions. He got me thinking, asked me questions like, what was my philosophy for the project? He helped me figure out how I wanted the project to look, how I wanted it to be structured and make it my own. Not only did he help me figure out my solution, but he taught me how to be a mentor. And that's something that I hope to do for people throughout my career. I can carry Dennis's legacy as the most loved mentor at Boston Children's Hospital by mentoring other people the way he mentored me.
That was awesome. It was it. I had a feeling that would be awesome.
A heartfelt thank you to the Open Peds team program, everyone who not only contributed, but it's clear the amount of love and collaboration that pulses through Open Peds. So thank you all very, very much. We now will invite the Lemonheads to play the outdoor type.
Always had a roof above me, always paid the rent. And I never set foot inside a tent. I couldn't build a fire to save my life. I lied about being the slept out underneath the stars. The closest that I came to that was one time my car broke down for an hour in the suburbs at night. I lied about being the outdoor type. Too scared to let you know you knew what you were looking for. I lied until I fit the bill. God bless the great indoors. I lied about being the outdoor type. I never owned a sleeping bag, let alone a mountain bike. I can't go away with you on a rock climbing weekend. What if something's on TV and it's never shown again? It's just as well I'm not invited. I'm afraid of heights. I lied about being the outdoor type. I never learned to swim, can't grow a beard or even fight. I lied about being the outdoor type.
Next, I would like to welcome Nicole Maffeo and Lisa Pixley, colleagues, friends, I believe going back to 7 South days. They will be performing The Parting Glass.
All the tears that I have wept, I have shed them in good company, and all the harm that e'er I met, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of life to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. Of all the comrades that e'er I had, I'm sorry for my going away, and to the sweetheart that e'er I had, who'd wish me one more day to stay. And but since it falls onto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I gently rise and softly call, good night and joy be to you all. So fill to me the parting glass and drink a health whate'er befalls. Then gently rise and softly call, good night and joy be to you all. So fill to me the parting glass and gather then gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all. Good night and joy be to you all.
I'd like to welcome Matt Brown, whom you've already heard about, a friend, a fellow resident of Norwood. Matt and Dennis met when Matt was 15. He will say more. He's an author, he's a speaker. He is a man of insight, and he will share about Dennis.
Dennis taught him this.
Hello? Thank you, Rabbi Harris. And good morning, everyone. I want to thank Nancy, Patrick, and Daniel, the Doherty family, and all of Dennis's colleagues and friends for allowing me to speak today on the relationship that I had with Dennis and the impact that he had on so many of his patients as his time as an unbelievable nurse and teacher. Dennis met me on the morning of Monday, January 25th, 2010, almost 36 hours after I suffered a spinal cord injury during a high school hockey game. At this point, I was still under the control of some powerful medication, and Dennis and I wouldn't exchange hellos for a few more days. This meant that he was left to fend for himself against my crazy family. With my mom being one of 6 and my dad being one of 8, he was going toe-to-toe with an army, but he more than held his own. When I finally came to and I was aware of the surroundings and the situation that was in front of me, Dennis actually had the day off. Immediately, the aunts, uncles, and family members in the room were letting me know about this Dennis Doherty guy and how I was going to be in special hands. On more than one occasion, I heard, "Did you know he's from Norwood?" And it didn't matter that him and his family just moved there the fall before. He was a Mustang in our eyes. And I immediately felt a sense of calmness come over me. When he first made his way into my room, I think he was a little shocked by how much an intubated 15-year-old could bust his chops, especially one that required one-to-one care around the clock. But he wasted no time giving it back to me, and within minutes, a special bond was formed. It's hard to express just how much of a guardian angel he was during my 3.5 weeks at Children's. Intubated and unable to speak clearly, Dennis and my father got creative and created a spelling board where I could go through the alphabet in fifths, pick out letters to form sentences and questions. It was a breakthrough for giving me back some of the independence that I lost. His calling card was knowing when I needed to have visitors come in and when I needed my rest. He coordinated having the entire hockey team come in to see me for the first time right as I was hitting my breaking point. Having 25 teenagers come in on a Saturday required more work on his end than I think he realized. Not to mention completely disregarding the unofficial guideline of 2 people to a bedside at once. But he knew it had to happen, and he always made sure to see how I was doing after each group exited. On the opposite end of that, he had no problem putting his foot down and turning people away in the evening after I had a long day, except for this one night. After telling a math teacher from Norwood High and a few others no, my mom got a call from the security desk that there was one more group to see me. Absolutely not, were the exact words that Dennis told my mom as she made her way down. When she returned with a group of 5 and a smirk on her face, I seriously thought I saw steam start to come out of his ears. But if there was anyone that was going to tell Jack Parker and the captains of the BU hockey team no, it was going to have to be Dennis himself. As a Northeastern alum and a Husky hockey fan, I'm sure deep, deep down, it would have brought one hell of a smile to his face to do just that. But as they left, the smile on both of our faces was a reassurance that we made the right decision. Okay, that was pretty cool, he said. When you're in the hospital in a situation like mine, doctors might be the ones that make you well, but nurses are the ones that allow you to heal. Selfishly, I absolutely hated the days and nights that he wasn't there. 4 years later, and feeling a lot better, I was asked to be the keynote speaker at the Worcester State Nursing pinning ceremony graduation. Instead of hearing from someone on the administrative side again, the class wanted to hear from someone who had the point of view of someone that they might take care of one day. I described to them my injury and what I saw a nurse to be in my eyes. A nurse wasn't just someone who took vitals and gave you meds. A nurse to me was a hand holder, a tear wiper, a conversationalist and a guardian angel presence, and above all, a friend in the time of need. Dennis had all these attributes, and if each soon-to-be nurse in that room could follow in his footsteps just a little bit, patients, even at their sickest, would be in good hands. In the years that followed, our paths would cross during my occasional visit to the hospital and at other quote-unquote happier venues, like a bar room or restaurant in Norwood. No matter where it was, he was always interested in what I was doing next. And speaking with Rabbi Harris this week, we laughed about his stern way of encouraging others. It was his way of getting the most out of what he saw in others to do what their calling card was. Whether it was a potential speaking engagement on the docket, or when I told him I wanted to write a book, his emphatic, "You should do that. You should definitely do that," was always a reassurance that what you were doing was right. The want and the hope to write a book finally became a reality in the fall of 2019. It takes the reader behind the curtain of what I was going through. 6 of those chapters are written by individuals who had a profound impact on me since my time of the accident. 3 of them are written by my father, mother, and sister. 1 is written by the one-to-one aide who was by my side when I went back to high school. 1 of them was written by the opposing player that I was racing for the puck against, who I now call a close friend. And chapter 6 was written by Dennis Doherty. He was the one that allowed me to heal. And he was one of the driving forces behind my decision to look forward and not back. Like many of you, there's a hole in my heart today that very well might never heal itself. What helps that, though, is the smile that comes to my face, knowing that the wisdom, attitude, thoughtfulness, and love that Dennis showed not just me and my family, but every other patient and family that he took care of, was passed on to all those new nurses that sat in front of him and will live on to help patients and their families for many years to come. Thank you.
I am the boy your mother wanted you to meet, but I am broken and torn with halos at my feet. And with your purest light, why don't you shine on me? Why I should have been an angel, but I'm too dumb to speak. Now as she gets near, the visions get clear. I'll kneel and weep and I will hold her dear. Oh, if your eyes water, you got your favorite number to spend. And oh, what a crying shame, what we became. Murdered my throat, screaming bloody all night. Hit him with the book and how he crumbles. Oh, you should have seen how the arches tumble. They're golden no more, now I'm smiling in my blood. I'm caught in a whirlwind, I'm going to heaven. I'm standing on trial and it's painted on canvas. An eternal testament to how we are so animalistic. And what a crying shame, what we became. I bowed my head in the morning light and said goodnight. I held her hand and I kissed her eyes. I stumbled down the stairs, hanged myself on high, and I started for the town light, front yard, died.
Our final speaker is Greg Durkin. After a nice conversation yesterday, asking him how he would like to be introduced, simply as the director of the department Dennis worked for.
Hey, what's up? This is how Dennis, that's what he said to me every time I met him. Hey, what's up? He also often called me dude, which I somehow managed to pick up and would start saying that to my friends, dude. And they'd look at me like, who are you? I'm not a dude, just in case it's not obvious. Nancy told me, please make me laugh. So I'm gonna make fun of myself and we'll make us laugh. I can see him sitting here listening, and when he was listening, he'd put his hand sort of like this. And he'd go, and he'd sort of make a face, and he'd go, dude, you're crushing it. I really liked Mike's speech at the beginning, and he said a lot of things that I felt when I was asked to speak today, I did exactly the same and thought, what the heck am I gonna say? I told Nancy it was my honor and privilege to speak about Dennis. What I didn't say is I was terrified. I mean, wow, what am I supposed to say? How am I gonna cover it? What Dennis would want me to say was, he was a rock star. because I don't know if you know this about Dennis, and those of you who know him personally, I'm coming from a work perspective, but our dentist could be a bit of an egomaniac. That's the laughter of recognition right there. So I'm going to start at the beginning. I've known Dennis well for a little less than 10 years. And he came to our department when I was not in a management role. He did not report to me at the time. And after a couple of years, work was restructured and I became management. And we gave Dennis what I call a Kramer versus Kramer child of a divorced parent moment. And we said, so Dennis, do you want to continue to work for Sarah or do you want to work for Greg? And Nancy's laughing because he probably talked about like, what are they doing to me? And it was terribly unfair, but that's what we did. We were, not great. And he chose me. And I was thrilled, but also a little surprised because I didn't really know him that much. I mean, when he came to our CEI department, I think I remember him being in one of a workshop that I had taught several years previous. And I called some people I knew on 7th South and I said, what's this Dennis guy? And they're like, oh, he's a good guy, but he's kind of a pain. And he said to me, you know why I came to this department, right, Greg? And I'm like, actually, no. He said, I took this job because I wanted to work with you and I want to be you. And I thought, you want to be insecure and needy and an approval junkie? And I thought, that's some heavy All About Eve crap you're playing on me right now. And if you don't get that reference, you can go look it up on Wikipedia. But Dennis told me clearly what he wanted to do and how he wanted to embrace nursing professional development. And then he sort of became a pain in my butt about it for the rest of our days. Dennis was exceptional, but he could be a royal pain, full of righteous indignation. He was confident in his truth. He was confident he was right all the time, even when he was wrong. Which wasn't very often, but he was wrong sometimes. He would constantly message me. Boundaries with me and Dennis in a traditional work boss-employee relationship, they didn't exist from the very beginning. Like he would text me constantly, like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, dude, you got a family. Stop asking about work. What's wrong with you? It was nonstop. And he would message me about the work. He didn't think the work he was doing was aligned with what he should be doing, and I need to change it. I'm like, I'll do it. And if he didn't like his workload or he didn't like a project he was being on and couldn't I make it better? He was blunt and direct and adamant. And he was usually right. But it was a lot of work to manage his expectations for change right now. I don't know if that's everybody's truth and reality with Dennis, but when Dennis had his mind made up, he wanted it to happen right now, and he was not very patient with other people keeping up with him. And I would keep telling him, we got to play the long game, Dennis. We got to keep our eye on the long game. This is going to take us a while, but I'm going to do it. And, we all love this guy, and his absence is so huge, I have trouble articulating it. But that doesn't mean he was perfect. On top of the disorganization we heard about earlier, he also wasn't so attentive to detail and would let things slip. And I can think of many times Lauren Danforth and I would sit there and go, we just wanted him to do this one little thing and he just couldn't, he didn't do this thing. And we'd be like, oh, Dennis, oh, Dennis. And then he'd fix it and it would all be fine. He also could come on strong and annoy people, particularly in his earlier days, because he had such conviction, it came off as bossy. He and I worked together to temper his tone, improve his relationships, and he would get so mad at me about that. I'm right. I don't understand why I have to tippy-toe over people. And I'm like, Dennis, have you seen where we work? Like, calm down. He was also kind of a bad writer. And this is, for those of you who don't work where I work, this is very important to our job. And so these are, he made a lot of mistakes with writing, and these are the worst things ever, but we write a lot. And we would edit what he was writing fairly regularly, and he would eventually over after time go on to give me things to review, and he would say not only drop knowledge to me quite a bit, but he would say, give me feedback, help me do better. with any criticism of Dennis, he took it gracefully and never defensively. He was a role model for how to receive feedback. Each weakness that he had, he didn't deny them. He threw himself into self-improvement, and he became an amazing and better person. He became an amazing relationship builder. Instead of annoying people, everybody wanted to know him. People all over would seek his guidance. He collaborated with a colleague in human resources, then built skill on difficult conversations, which was not something he had a strong suit when he first started. And he eventually became a sought-out expert on that topic. He built so much skill in writing. Let's not forget, he got a PhD, so you got to write. He wrote more journal articles in 2 years than anybody I've ever known. And he recently wrote a chapter in a book that I'm helping to edit. He took his weaknesses and acknowledged them and turned them into strengths. Well, except for maybe the attention to detail part of that. We were still working. We connected right from the start. He would say to me regularly, "I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm on Team Greg." This is what he would say. It's like, you're nut. He wanted to exceed. He wanted to be the best that he could be. He wanted to help nurses. He wanted to help our interprofessional colleagues be the best they could be. We heard that. That's a theme I think I heard through the entire presentations today. He never wavered in his commitment to excellence and the value of professional growth. We didn't spend a ton of free time together. I realized by hearing from so many people over the last month that I actually didn't really know a lot about him. That didn't seem to matter because we were connected. We laughed together. We were frustrated together. We gossiped together. We strategized together, but we didn't really socialize a lot. I do remember a couple of times he and Nancy came out to Provincetown, and I live in Provincetown part-time, and he wanted to hang out. Dennis was the kind of guy that if he liked you, he pursued you. That's what he did. I'm just like, whatever, I could have more friends, it's cool. And he's like, if we want to come out for a day, I've never really been there. Are we going to be in your way? Are we going to I'm like, no, come on out, it'll be fun, whatever. And they came out to visit and dropped their stuff off at my place. And they decided we're going to rent a kayak and go paddle around Provincetown Harbor. Do you remember, Nancy? And a friend of mine, Troy, we said, well, let's go join them. And so they had left. And so we went and got a kayak for ourselves. And I thought, let's get a bottle of Prosecco and 4 glasses and we'll go have a toast in the middle of Provincetown Harbor. And so we paddled out, we found them and we're like, Dennis, Nancy, we have Prosecco. And Dennis was like, what? And I still am not sure if that made me a rock star or a nutcase, but we were floating around the harbor on a sunny, beautiful day, and Prosecco fizzy. And I'm like, there's a pod of seals that take up home in the harbor every year. Let's go paddle over there. And I was like, what? I'm like, come on, let's go. And so we started going over there. And we get there, we're there, I don't know, 20, 30 feet away. I don't know, it wasn't that far, but it was far enough that we weren't going to disrupt the wildlife. He was terrified. Of a seal. I have a picture on my phone, just like Mike has pictures. I have pictures. I have a picture on my phone, and he's in the back, as him in the kayak. I was like, dude. It makes me smile right now to think about that. This fearless guy who would talk to anyone. The fearless guy who would take on challenges, who ran a marathon, who was in a band, who would stand on the deck of a mostly gay space with Nancy, both drinking Planters punches and wearing wreaths around their head, that picture, because it was carnival and a jungle theme, and that's what you did, right? I took that picture, I think that's from another year that they came out to Provincetown and it was carnival. And I said, there's a theme, so people get dressed up. And so Nancy made these wreaths for them. And I don't know, maybe this is weird, but like, I want you to think about this. This bar that we're at has probably 1,000, 2,000, mostly gay people on it. And here's Dennis and Nancy in the middle of it. You know, we're all getting drunk and they go, we have to put wreaths on our head because this is what we do. And Dennis is beaming. He's like, this is so much fun. People were coming over and putting wigs on his head. And he was like crushing it, you know? I do have a picture of him with a wig on his head and some very bad glasses. It's hilarious. He did all these things without fear. He'd keep the party going until way after he should have. Afraid of a seal. Later, we go to have lunch or hang with some of my friends. And I have several friends who live out there who met Nancy and Dennis for an afternoon. And they remember, they send their sympathies and condolences. They have said many positive things. Like the connection Dennis made with people was so fast. And you did not have to know him for 20 years for him to think of you as a friend. He was friends with anyone. You know, we considered ourselves friends as well as employee boss. I think we navigated that relationship better than anyone could expect, I guess. On the surface though, there's not really any reason Dennis and I would be friends. We're different ages, we have different upbringings, we have different interests in our personal lives. You know, he liked the Patriots, I could care less. He likes sports, I like shopping. He likes rock and roll, I like EDM. He likes Vegas, I like Paris. Like, you know, he was an extrovert, I'm an introvert. He was a schmoozer, I sort of sit in the corner and judge. But we spent a lot of time at work together and would hang at conferences and have dinner or whatever. But we only spent a really small amount of free time together over almost a decade. And in the time we were together, we almost always talked about professional development work or who was irritating us, or what our vision for the future was, or brainstorming, or who I should hire. Most of the people that have joined our team have been hired because Dennis took them under their wings and championed them and said, you're gonna crush it and you should come work in this department. And then he told me, you need to hire them. Like I said, he was usually right. He was so into his work, it was a driving force. The passion he had was remarkable. I knew he took time off for volunteer work, but we never really talked about what that was about and what it meant to him. You know, I had hung out with Nancy 3 or 4 times and knew about the kids, but it wasn't in a deep way like many of you here today. From the start, Dennis was passionate and driven about our work. He wanted to be involved in everything. He wanted to be the go-to guy for everything. He was hard to balance his ego with his workload. He did not like other people being the star of the show. He wanted to be the star of the show. Even though he wasn't like a look at me kind of person. I don't know how to really articulate it. There's a thing about Dennis. Over the years we worked together, he was my guy. The way I know he was your guy for many of you. He was my go-to when I needed help on the latest crisis project on 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, which happens almost every week. He was my guy when I had an idea and I needed help fleshing it out more. He was my guy when something seemed off and I needed a reality check. He was my guy when I wanted to vision, to dream, or to create. One of my team said the same thing to me this week. When she needed something, she went to Dennis. She could always rely on him. He was always there for you. He was always there for her. He was always there for me. Whenever you need, I'm on your side. They say you remember not what people did, but how they made you feel. Dennis made people feel valued, empowered, capable, appreciated, challenged, and inspired. He also made people annoyed, infuriated, and flustered. With me, sometimes he and I were like 2 wet cats in a burlap sack at each other. It's true. At a team meeting last spring, we had 3 new people on our team, and Dennis started fussing me on the team meeting about some workload related to education platform. I won't bore with details. He just thought that the distribution work was unfair, and he was going to tell me about it in front of everybody. And I reacted, and there we were, 2 wet cats, while the rest of the team's like watching in horror, like, why did I take this job? And I was worried about that. And I talked to another person on our team and said, I'm worried that, the rest of the new people think that we're crazy. And she's like, oh no, we just told them that's Dennis and Greg being Dennis and Greg, and it's all fine. I didn't know we had a reputation, but apparently we did. And later, at the end of the meeting, Dennis said, stay on, and we stayed on, and we apologized to each other, and we moved on. It was never mentioned again, and that's just what we did. And he said regularly to me, I'll do what you want. I'll follow your lead. I trust you. And I trusted him. He was on your side all the time. So many people have been impacted by Dennis, and his performance was outstanding. I don't know how to summarize all of the work that he did. For those of you who know him personally and don't know him professionally, his impact in our hospital is incredible. And he ran circles around everybody with the amount of work that he did. I mean, this was ego because he wanted to be the king of everything. But I thought the best way I could do it is I can give you a snippet of some of his last performance evaluation that I gave him a few weeks before he was diagnosed, actually. And important to say that our organization, our evaluations, we rate people on a 1 to 5 scale, and it's sort of unspoken that you're not allowed to get a 5. And I gave him a 5. It's the first time I've ever done it. And I told my boss, I'm like, we're giving him a 5 and I'm gonna fight you if you say no. Dennis, and so I'm gonna read a little bit of what I wrote about him. So it's in current tense, not past tense. Dennis is an incredible educator with passion and purpose behind every program he does. He takes his education seriously and works hard to deliver value-added content to his learners. Dennis is constantly environmentally scanning for topics that might be useful and takes the initiative to change existing programs or develop new ones. Dennis recently developed a relationship with a practitioner from Houston and invited her to offer a program for our educators on trauma-informed care. This never would have happened without him championing it. Dennis regularly proposes new education, even though he already leads autism, behavioral health, leading from the frontline, charge nurse, on and on and on. He's been fundamental to the development of our high reliability refresh, serving as a member of a development committee and implementing the use of a new learning strategy for the delivery of the content. He's been essential to this effort and has been a leader in high reliability, a very important thing to our hospital, since day one. He leads education for healthy work environment, is associate clinical director for the SIM folks, contributes to continuing education reviews, revises computer-based learning modules. The list goes on and on and on. He takes leadership roles. He championed the adoption of a new platform. He's a leader in evidence-based practice. His leadership with Professional Advancement Board. He created and runs programs. He manages all of RN orientation. He helped create a boot camp for new, less experienced nurses. He got certified as a DISC expert trainer and facilitates sessions. He led our team in a 3-part Beyond Burnout series to help us deal with some of our satisfaction and engagement scores. And he helped me plot out nursing career pathways. Wow, this is in 1 year, everyone. And while he did all of that, he also had a family life, and he published 3 articles in peer-reviewed journals. He completed his PhD. He was one of the first 20 people in the United States to achieve advanced level certification in our profession. He was appointed as a column editor on leadership for the Journal for Nurses and Professional Development. He was elected as a director for the board of the Association for Nursing Professional Development. He wrote a chapter on leadership for an upcoming textbook that's getting published this summer. He presented at Sigma Theta Tau, a very prestigious nursing honor society, and also to a bunch of school nurses at St. Elm College and some college. And that's just the stuff I know about. He's remarkable and exhausting. I was on vacation when I got the news. I had been gone for 12 hours. I told my partner, Jeff, we were actually sitting at lunch when Lee texted me, can you call me? And he had met Dennis a few times, and he had heard me talk about Dennis a lot. I talk about my work people a lot. Jeff said a couple of things to me, and the first thing he said was, he was a good man. He was. He also said to me, you know, they say that no one is irreplaceable. But I don't think that's true about Dennis, he said. He is irreplaceable. I mean, sure, the tasks are going to get done. The people I work with are committed to our work, and we are going to make sure the net learning courses get assigned. We're going to make sure that the Healthy Work Environment Survey goes out. We're going to teach the classes. We're going to do the tasks will get done. But how do we place his passion, his breadth of work, his relationships, his humor, his ego, his ability to mentor, advise, support, and encourage? Somebody said, a peer reviewer said to him that Dennis is so innovative, collaborative, inspirational, creative, motivational. I mean, how many adjectives do we need to have for this guy? And then he never makes me feel inadequate, she said. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Dennis was remarkable. He was an inspiration, he was a performer, and he was my friend. He never once criticized me for being human. He wanted me to be the best I could be, and as I was his champion, he was mine. For this, I owe so much to him. He was my guy. A few days ago, Lauren asked me if I had any photos of me and Dennis to share. She was getting pics together to send to ANPD. Our organization's annual conference is a very poorly timed. It's happening starting on Monday. And my whole team we're all gonna be there together. And Dennis, you know, obviously had normally been very visible, and he's very important to that organization. And they're gonna have an acknowledgement and a little memorial to him at the opening presentation. As an aside, Dennis, I just want you all to be aware, particularly those outside of his professional life, that Dennis was so respected that this organization sent a broadcast email about his passing to over 7,000 members. They've done this twice before in the last 20 years. That's the impact Dennis has. The journal that he wrote for sent a similar message to all of us on the editorial team. Anyway, it turns out when I'm looking through all my photos, because Lauren had asked me, I didn't really take a lot of pics of us. But I found some from each year at ANPD, and the overarching takeaway, aside from the fact that I clearly take too many selfies, is that Dennis was kind of a nut. There's not really a serious picture in the batch. I remember a few years ago, we were in Orlando for a convention. We did our best bonding at convention. I'm not the biggest fan of Disney and all that stuff, but there we were. And Lauren and Dennis and I, we got into our heads, I think a little spurred on by Dennis, that shouldn't we in our free time get a pass and race to as many thrill rides in all of the parks as we could possibly do in 3 hours. We're gonna crush it. And I'm like, I love a good roller coaster, so let's go. And we ran like crazy people, from the Tower of Terror to the Rock roller coaster to Space Mountain, only to find out we had screwed up our fast pass and we were not going to be able to ride it. And we ended up around 10 o'clock at night. The park was, another half hour or something before it closes, and we decided we were going to run to Expedition Everest and ride that roller coaster before it closed. And we got on the thing and we rode it, screaming and carrying on like a bunch of teenagers. And we got off of it and we're like, the park's not closed, let's do it again. So we did it again. We got off, we're like, the park's still not closed, let's do it again. And so we did it again, and we did it again. And I think we wrote it 5 times. I'm looking at Lauren, she's shaking her head. And it was such a moment of screaming, laughing, and pure joy. At another convention in Vegas, we had gone out to dinner and had a drink or 2 or maybe 3, I'm not sure. But when we were done, Dennis was like, all right, where are we going next? And I'm like, I'm going to bed. And he's like, no, you know, like the worst thing you could say to Dennis was, no, you didn't want to continue to party with him. Like this was a soul crushing thing. But I'm like, you know, Dennis, I'm old, I'm going to bed. And so he's like, come on. I'm like, no. But he and Lauren, they went out. They kept going out. And they, I think the phrase is tied one on. And I think they stayed up way too late and drank way too much. And the next day, Dennis, being Dennis, was Mr. Professional Development, fine, as if nothing had gone wrong. And, you know, well, you can ask Lauren how she felt. But he was a nut. He was so in convention, we'd sit next to each other sharing commentary, you know, quietly, we weren't disruptive, but we were definitely commenting. And at free time, he'd be laughing, making faces, just enjoying himself and being around his people. One year, Dr. Marlene Kramer spoke. For those of you who don't know, she was a legend in nursing. She passed about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And she's the one who identified this thing called reality shock, which is very important in our world. Well, she was up in years and standing at the podium, and she was talking about a difficult situation. And she said, well, tough titties, said the kitty. And this silly little phrase, I'm looking at Karen because I know, Karen, you were like, I did not like that. And people were mortified that this professional 80-something-year-old woman was having this language. And that was only like the beginning of what she was saying, let me just tell you. This is a family show, so I edited it. Dennis fell out of his chair laughing. He's like, she's the best. And I said, with age comes permission. And he got her, and he was all in with people who were real. I talked to somebody earlier today, and they said, he wanted you to be authentic. And I'm like, I call it real. Dennis didn't like fake or posturing people so much. He wanted you to be authentic and true. He used to say to me, there's a lot of pumping tires going on around here. This is his very disparaging thing that we're just talking about how great we are, but there's not anything supporting how great we are. And we're not actually we're not taking change or making action. Dennis wanted action and had a hard time dealing with the slow wheels of change. He learned to adapt and manage his feelings about that. But when Dennis saw a need for something, he wanted to do it now. And by now, it meant now. And he wanted you to do it now too. He created so much that didn't exist because he wanted to make change and help nurses and interprofessional staff. Out of a spark and an idea, he created the Leading from the Frontline series to help nurses and clinicians grow leadership skills. He continued to revise and expand that program all the time, every year, even last year while he was in chemo. I mean, the guy would be getting treatment and texting me about work. He was passionate about healthy work environment and took a localized effort and spread it across the entire nursing patient care department, always with a desire to do something to make frontline staff's work life better. He believed in the power of people and the power of improvement. He cared deeply about staff, and he quite simply, he got stuff done. I've been around professional development folks for decades, and it's not hyperbole for me to say to you that he was one of a handful of the most passionate people about our work in the country. His impact is so vast. I've received condolence emails talking about Dennis with me from all over the United States. Most notably from two leaders. Their names are Carrie Schmidt and Dora Bradley, which are names are not going to mean anything to most people in this room. But Carrie Schmidt and Dora Bradley are like the godmothers of nursing professional development. And they are deeply impressive and influential people. And they wrote to say how much they respected him, how much they enjoyed working with him, and how sad they were. I'm positive that Dennis would be beaming to know that he'd be like, Carrie effing Schmidt knows who I am. You know, if you don't know these people, it doesn't mean anything, but those of you who know you people are like, this is a big deal. Another one of my friends who works for the American Nurses Association wrote me just Thursday afternoon. And she said, you know, Greg, I've been following Dennis's career for years since he presented at convention. Like people would see him do a presentation and then, who is this guy? What was it? And she goes, and you know, at convention last year, I finally met him for the first time, and he seemed like one of those rare and remarkable individuals. There's that word again. I barely knew him, and yet he inspired me. I have worked and do work with a lot of great people, but no one comes close to Dennis's passion and drive. When he came into the role and started working with me directly, it was like he found his calling, and I've never known anyone like him. Please don't be envious of that, my coworkers at the hospital. Be inspired. He was all in and was hungry to learn, to grow, and to pass that on to others. In 2005, an author named Eric Liu wrote a book called Guiding Lights. In this book, he tells stories of people from all walks of life who've mentor, coach, and support and inspire others. Eric Liu says that all of us have people in our lives who have influenced us for good and for bad. And every day after that, we are passing on that influence for good or for bad to others. And I regularly think about the people who influenced me, both for good and bad. And I can tell you right now that I know how much Dennis influenced me for good. And I will continue to pass that on. When Dennis started working with me, he said, "I want to be you." He did more than that. He let go of trying to be someone else and instead became the best Dennis he could be. He was a friend, a mentor, a leader, a visionary, and a nut. He is gone too soon and leaves a very large hole in many of our hearts. There have been and continue to be rivers of tears among the people I work with. The pain many of us feel is so great, we can't express it. I've heard it every day this week from people I work closely with. He touched so many and was so admired. I can't make that loss hurt less. I wish I could. But I think he would be proud to know that so many people in here say, "I want to be Dennis." So please go out there and be like Dennis. Make him proud. Thank you.
I'm going to be short because this is hard. I would like to just take a moment to thank everybody for coming today and for being so supportive to our family over these past 3 pretty awful years. We have received so many words, kind gestures, hugs, all those things. And we appreciate every last one. So know that if I haven't reached out to you to say thank you, I appreciate everything that everybody's done. I'd like to thank in particular everybody who was involved with this event today, all of the speakers and the organizers and anybody who participated in putting this together. This was hard. And that being said, I just want to give a very special thanks to my friend Carla Spellman. I don't know where she is. Where are you? In the back? Oh, you're right there. Carla is a friend of mine, and she stepped up to the plate in a big way when I was not able to organize this. And she has done all of this and volunteered her time and has been a very wonderful friend to me and has given me a wonderful gift by making this happen today. So thank you very much. We certainly did it up today, didn't we? And I have to say we made a total scene. This is a total scene and you would have loved it. The last thing I want to say is I just want to have a quick word about the last song you're going to hear today. And I just want to be clear that when the song ends, we can all disperse, right? Just so you know. So it's called Paprika, and you heard a little bit from Rabbi Harris at the beginning about it. The lyrics to the song are actually printed on the back cover of your program if you want to read it. Dennis was always seeking out new music. He was a great music lover, and I know that for many of us, we kind of stick into the rhythm of what we liked in high school is what we listened to for the rest of our lives. But Dennis wasn't like that. He was always looking for new bands and new experiences. So this band, Japanese Breakfast, is not exactly new, but my guess is most of you don't know who they are, right? But I like them, and Dennis liked them very much too. I read an interview with the woman who wrote the song. She's the lead singer of the band. Her name's Michelle Zahner. And she talked about the meaning behind the song. She wrote the song to describe her powerful influence over others as a songwriter and performer. And although Dennis wasn't really a songwriter, right? He was an influential visionary. I mean, we've heard it from everybody here today. So he was able to use his remarkable ability to foster authentic relationships to create his influence, right? So he listened to this song a lot during 2022, and I know that because I have his Spotify account still active. And I hope as each of you listen to it with me now, you'll hear just a little bit of him in it. So thanks for being here today in Paprika.
The city came slowly. I awoke from dreams of untying a great knot and unraveled like a braid into what seemed were thousands of separate strands of fishing line attached to course behavior flow. A calm, each what does it feel? How's it feel to be at the center of magic, to linger in tones and words? I opened the floodgates and found no water, no current, no river, no road. How's it feel to stand at the party of powers, to captivate every heart, projecting your visions to strangers who feel it, who listen, to linger on every word. Oh, it's a rush. Oh, it's a But alone it feels like dying. All alone I feel so numb. I want my offering to come to clear the song, but the only offering that comes, it calls, it screams, there's nothing here. How's it feel to be at the center of magic, to linger in tones and words? I opened the floodgates and found no water, no current, no river, no road. How's it feel to stand at the party of powers, to captivate every heart, projecting your visions to strangers who feel it,
Elevator up there, yeah, elevator, go up the back way. Garage is right there.